For Carl Gustav Jung, individuation is not merely a theoretical idea. It is the soul's deepest mission, the silent purpose hidden behind every experience, every pain, and every rediscovery of oneself. It is a journey of courage, an inner voyage toward the wholeness of being. Imagine for a moment that your mind is a vast mosaic. Some pieces are bright, visible, and beautifully in place. Others are broken, forgotten, buried beneath layers of fear, shame, or denial. The process of individuation is the act of gathering those scattered fragments, reshaping what was lost, and realizing that even the darkest, most disconnected pieces are still part of the image that is you, complete, authentic, and profoundly human. Jung believed that this path is solitary and non-transferable. No one can walk it for you. It is an invitation to genuine self-knowledge, the kind that goes beyond comforting quotes and reaches into the places that ache, into the shadows, the wounds, the truths the ego tries to hide. The ego, that small conscious portion of our identity, likes to believe it is the center of everything. Yet in truth, it is only a guest within a much larger house, the psyche. Throughout the process of individuation, the ego learns to listen, to converse with the unconscious, with the shadow, with the archetypes, until it finally connects with the self, the true regulating center of the soul, the point where all dualities are reconciled. And here lies one of Jung's greatest insights. Individuation is not a straight line, nor a quick journey. It is a lifelong crossing, but within that passage one discovers what it truly means to be whole. Because wholeness is not perfection, it is truth. It is the courage to be real, even with imperfections, flaws, and the parts of ourselves we have not yet learned to understand. Before we can grasp individuation, Jung invites us to look inward and understand the structure of the psyche itself. The human mind is not a simple or unified system. It is a living landscape inhabited by opposing forces that coexist and often collide. On one side lies consciousness, the field of what we know, our thoughts, emotions, memories, and perceptions. But beneath it stretches a vast ocean, the unconscious. In this ocean dwell forgotten memories, instinctive energies, repressed desires, and universal symbols that shape the way we experience the world. Jung identified two main layers in this inner sea, the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. The personal unconscious holds everything we have lived and suppressed, traumas, fears, denied emotions, aspects of ourselves the ego refused to acknowledge. The collective unconscious, on the other hand, is a deeper, shared dimension, a realm that belongs to all humanity. It is home to the archetypes, the primordial images and symbolic patterns that guide our myths, dreams, and behaviors, even when we are unaware of them. Within this dynamic, the human being exists in constant duality, consciousness and unconsciousness, light and shadow, reason and emotion, masculine and feminine, the individual and the collective. Individuation is the reconciliation of these opposites, allowing them to coexist in balance within the psyche. Yet there is one unavoidable step along this path, the confrontation with the shadow. The shadow is the hidden face of the personality, everything we reject in ourselves, impulses, thoughts, emotions we've deemed unacceptable. Denying the shadow feeds inner conflict and perpetuates destructive patterns. Embracing it transforms pain into creative energy. Individuation, then, is a dance between light and darkness, a continuous movement where every step, even the hardest one, brings you closer to your essence. The shadow, perhaps Jung's most powerful idea, represents what we try to conceal: our anger, envy, fear, insecurity, jealousy, guilt. Yet it is not merely the dark side. Within it lie our blocked potentials, our suffocated talents, our vital energy waiting to be released. To deny the shadow is to deny a part of yourself. And when that happens, the result is fragmentation, imbalance, and suffering. Looking into the shadow is painful, but it is also liberating, because in that courageous gaze, awakening begins. Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." And awakening is the beginning of all transformation. When you recognize your shadow, you do not become darker, you become whole. And from that wholeness comes authenticity, the power to live without masks, to act without fear, to exist in truth. Jung proposed techniques like active imagination, a symbolic dialogue with the hidden parts of the unconscious, allowing them to emerge and be understood. For example, someone who represses anger may find it expressing itself through physical tension, anxiety, or difficult relationships. Once that emotion is recognized, it ceases to be an invisible enemy and transforms into creative power, consciously directed toward life itself. The shadow also reveals itself through projection, when we see in others what we refuse to see in ourselves. That is why certain people irritate us for no apparent reason. They mirror the parts of us we are not yet ready to face. That is why certain people irritate us for no apparent reason. They reflect what we refuse to see within ourselves. The path of individuation begins with this recognition, and perhaps the very first step is simply to admit, there is a part of me I do not yet understand, but I am ready to meet it. If this message resonates with you, write in the comments, "Today, I choose to look within." And if you feel ready to dive deeper into self-discovery, psychology, and inner transformation, make sure to subscribe to Unshakable Mind, where every reflection is another step toward awakening. In the journey of individuation, one of the greatest challenges is realizing that what we project onto others truly belongs to us. Every judgment, every irritation, every exaggerated admiration, all of it reveals forgotten or rejected parts of our psyche. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." As long as we fail to recognize our projections, we remain prisoners of them, endlessly repeating the same patterns, unaware that the mirror of life is simply reflecting what still needs to be healed within us. Deep within the human soul dwell even more symbolic forces, living presences that shape how we love, think, and live. Jung called them anima and animus, the archetypes of the inner opposite. Within every man lives the anima, the unconscious feminine. Within every woman lives the animus, the unconscious masculine. These are not abstract ideas, they are living energies that subtly influence our emotions, behaviors, and relationships. Ignoring them means living in disconnection, cut off from the wholeness of our own being. A man who denies his anima often distances himself from his emotions, becoming rigid, overly rational, unable to access the sensitivity and intuition that would complete him. A woman who ignores her animus, on the other hand, may struggle to express her ideas, doubt her inner strength, and surrender her voice when she most needs to hold it firm. Integrating these inner figures is an act of reconciliation between reason and emotion, strength and sensitivity, doing and feeling. It is like a dance between the sun and the moon, two opposites that together sustain the balance of life. This inner union gives birth to true psychological maturity, one that has nothing to do with age, but with the depth of self-awareness. Jung saw this process as a creative dance of opposites, a sacred harmony that awakens new dimensions of love, consciousness, and spirituality. The anima and animus are bridges connecting our inner world to the way we relate to others. And when these bridges are crossed, consciously, life becomes richer, more authentic and free. At the heart of this entire journey lies the self, the silent center of the psyche, the symbol of totality. While the ego represents the part of us that knows, decides, and tries to control, the self is the force that orchestrates everything, the guiding principle that leads us toward integration. Jung compared the self to the center of a mandala, the sacred pattern that symbolizes inner harmony and unity. While the ego worries about the demands of the external world, the self points towards something deeper, the rediscovery of the soul's purpose. Ultimately, the path of individuation is the awakening of the self, the awareness that we are far more than the mask we wear, far more than the name, the role, or the story we believe ourselves to be. But awakening is not easy. It requires surrender. It takes courage to release control and allow the unconscious to reveal what the ego fears to face. That is why Jung said the relationship between the ego and the self is never complete. It is an eternal dance, the reflection of our human journey filled with falls and revelations, silence and rediscovery. To revisit the shadow is to revisit the unknown within us. And the unknown can be terrifying, but it is also liberating. Denying the shadow is like trying to hide a storm. It doesn't disappear. It gathers strength until it bursts into symptoms, conflicts, and pain that seem to come from the outside, but always begin within. The true power of the shadow appears when we have the courage to face it, when we stop fearing what we feel and start understanding what those feelings are trying to teach us. The shadow does not only hold our fears, it also guards our gifts, the talents we have buried under layers of shame, guilt, or social judgment. To integrate the shadow is to uncover fragments of gold hidden in the mud. Within what we avoid lies our vital force. When a person accepts their shadow, they reclaim authenticity. They stop being driven by unconscious impulses and begin to act with awareness, presence, and truth. If this reflection inspired you, take a moment to write in the comments, "Today, I choose to awaken." And don't forget to subscribe to Unshakable Mind, because this journey of consciousness is just beginning. The human soul was born to create, to love, and to evolve. Among the tools Jung developed to guide this inner journey, perhaps the most transformative, is active imagination. A meditative practice where one allows the unconscious to speak through images, symbols, and inner figures. Through writing, drawing, visualization, or inner dialogue, the mysterious territory of the unconscious begins to reveal itself as a living source of wisdom. It takes patience and surrender, because diving into the unconscious means getting a little lost, and in that sacred losing, finding yourself on a deeper level. Every symbol, every image, every subtle feeling that arises carries a message. Listening to those messages is an act of reconnection with the self. Jung saw in this practice the same symbolic structure as the hero's journey, the mythic path that would later inspire Joseph Campbell, the one who departs, faces monsters, endures trials and returns transformed, not with gold but with wisdom. And in that story, the hero is each of us. The monsters we face do not live in distant forests. They dwell within our own minds and hearts. Individuation is this heroic journey, the passage through the unknown, returning with a renewed sense of who we truly are. It is not easy, nor linear. There are setbacks, pain, resistance, but above all, there is growth. If this message touches something inside you, write in the comments, "I accept the call of my soul." And remember, every reflection here on Unshakable Mind is another step toward your inner wholeness. Subscribe now, because the path of self-discovery is long, but you don't have to walk it alone. Throughout the path of individuation, there are forces that try to pull us away from our inner truth. Among them, the dominance of the ego, the pressure to conform, and the fear of facing our own shadow. These are perhaps the greatest obstacles any seeker encounters. We live in a society that glorifies image, achievement, and control. From an early age, we learn to hide our weaknesses, deny our fears, and build a mask that appears strong, successful, normal. Yet behind every mask lives a silent exhaustion, a repressed cry for authenticity. Traumas, family conditioning, and cultural beliefs quietly shape an invisible prison. And until we recognize these barriers, we continue to live half-lives, divided between who we are and who we pretend to be. Recognizing the obstacles is the first step, not to blame yourself, but to free yourself. Individuation demands patience, self-compassion, and the courage to begin again, as many times as it takes. Because this process isn't about rushing to some spiritual destination. It's about learning to walk consciously, even through the darkest nights of the soul. Within this journey, archetypes play an essential role. They are universal patterns of behavior and symbolic images that live within the collective unconscious, living blueprints that shape our dreams, choices, and actions. Among the most well-known are the hero, the sage, the great mother, the healer, the trickster, the magician, and many others. Each carries a unique psychic energy that influences how we perceive and respond to life. Recognizing which archetypes are active within you is like lighting a lantern inside your soul. When you realize, for example, that the hero within you always tries to overcome everything alone, or that the victim inside feels perpetually powerless, you begin to see what truly drives you and what still holds you back. Integrating these archetypes is vital for the psyche to become more balanced, creative, and whole. Jung spoke of something he called the transcendent function, a process that unites opposites within the mind. It creates a new form of consciousness, one capable of reconciling inner conflicts that once seemed impossible to resolve. In practice, this happens when the ego learns to dialogue with the unconscious, mediating between light and shadow, reason and emotion, masculine and feminine. The transcendent function doesn't eliminate tension, it transforms it into growth. True wisdom, Jung believed, is born not from rejecting contradiction, but from learning to live with it, holding both sides of your truth without denying either one. This kind of wisdom does not come from the rational mind, but from the deep integration of experience, from the meeting point between what we know and what we feel. For Jung, one of the most powerful gateways to this integration is dreams. He saw dreams as symbolic messages from the unconscious, attempts by the soul to speak with consciousness. In the process of individuation, dreams become precious allies. They reveal what the ego refuses to see, the shadow, the anima, the animus, and even the self itself. Dream interpretation, Jung said, is not about cracking secret codes. It's about listening to the unconscious as it speaks in images. That's why he recommended something both simple and profound: keeping a dream journal. Every dream is a doorway, and when you dare to step through, you meet yourself on the other side. If this resonates with you, Pause for a moment and write in the comments, "I choose to awaken my inner world." And remember, subscribe to Unshakable Mind for more reflections like this, because the journey inward is endless, but every insight brings you closer to home. When you begin to notice your dreams, reflect on their symbols, and recognize recurring patterns, something inside you awakens. Each image becomes a message, a whisper from your soul guiding you towards self-understanding. Jung saw myths in the same way, as living stories carrying the archetypes of all humanity. Every myth mirrors the path of the soul, the call, the struggle, the fall, the transformation, and the return. Across different cultures, the heroes and gods may change, but the story remains the same, the eternal search for meaning. Yet individuation does not unfold in isolation. It's shaped by culture, family, religion, and society, all of which mold our values and create inner resistance. The great challenge is learning to see which parts of us are real and which are borrowed. Without that clarity, we confuse obedience for morality and conditioning for truth. The ego stands at the center of consciousness, necessary but also deceptive. It gives us identity, helps us survive, but when it believes it's the master of the house, it blocks the natural flow of the unconscious. The ego wants control, the soul wants life. And when the ego refuses to listen, life finds other ways to wake us up. Often, that awakening comes through crisis, emotional, spiritual, existential. Jung didn't see these moments as punishment, but as invitations. The collapse is not destruction, it's transformation. Pain becomes the soul's language when we ignore what needs to change. And when you stop running and finally listen to that cry, something begins to heal. Meditation, silence, art, all are sacred tools for hearing that inner voice. When the noise of the world fades, the unconscious begins to speak. Its language may be symbolic, but its purpose is always integration. For Jung, creativity was a pure expression of that vital energy. To create is to heal. Writing, painting, dancing, every act of creation is a dialogue with the soul, a bridge between the seen and the unseen. And in the end, individuation isn't something distant or mystical. It happens here in your daily choices. When you say no to what hurts you, when you take responsibility for your emotions, when you accept criticism without collapsing, when you embrace your feelings instead of denying them. These small acts are sacred initiations of the soul. If you feel that quiet call inside, that longing to live more consciously, write in the comments, "I choose to live with truth." And remember, here on Unshakable Mindset, every reflection is a mirror for your soul. Subscribe, stay with us, and keep walking this path. The awakening is a journey, and you are exactly where you're meant to be. To face your emotions without running or denying them, that's one of the greatest tests of the inner journey. How many times have you reacted on impulse, buried your anger, your jealousy, your sadness, pretending everything was fine? Jung taught that behind every intense emotion lies a message from the unconscious, a fragment of the shadow yearning to be seen, or an archetype seeking balance within your psyche. Individuation doesn't happen only in deep meditation. It also happens in ordinary moments, when you choose awareness over reaction, when you pause to understand what your feelings are trying to tell you. Every conscious act is a small victory on the long road toward inner harmony. Jung saw the mandala as the ultimate symbol of wholeness, a perfect circle representing balance among all parts of the self. Imagine yourself at the center of your mandala. Each color, each line, each symbol represents a piece of your mind. The conscious, the unconscious, the shadow, the anima, the animus, the self. Walking toward the center of that mandala is walking the path of individuation, a return home to the essence that has always lived within you. The journey isn't linear, it's circular, spiraling through time. Sometimes you feel like you've evolved, only to find yourself back where you started. But that isn't failure, it's maturity. Each return brings new vision. Each spiral reveals the same truth from a higher level. Transformation happens slowly, with patience and awareness. Individuation can't be rushed. It's the work of a lifetime. Jung believed that every stage of life brings its own challenges. In youth, we wrestle with identity. In midlife, we face the shadow. In maturity, we seek wisdom and acceptance. Understanding this softens the anxiety and teaches us patience with our own process. And remember, no one individuates alone. Relationships are the most powerful mirrors we have. It's through others that our wounds are exposed, our archetypes awaken, and our shadows are projected. When someone deeply irritates you, pause and ask, what is this trying to show me about myself? Often, what we judge in others is what we refuse to see in ourselves. That realization changes everything. When you understand that your anger, envy, and fears are reflections of your own inner landscape, you reclaim your power. You stop being a victim of circumstance and become a student of your own soul. That's when self-knowledge turns into true liberation. Think of someone who feels envy but denies it. When they see another person succeed, they grow resentful, invent excuses to diminish them. But that emotion isn't about the other. It's a cry from within, from the part of them that longs to grow but hasn't found the courage to act. The moment they recognize that, transformation begins. The energy once used for criticism becomes fuel for change. That is the real purpose of individuation, turning pain into awareness, shadow into wisdom, resistance into growth. Within this journey, the inner feminine and masculine, the anima and animus, play essential roles. A man who ignores his anima becomes emotionally disconnected, trapped in control and rigidity, unable to express tenderness. A woman who suppresses her animus may doubt her strength, depend too much on approval, or fear assertiveness. But when these inner forces learn to dialogue, a new balance emerges. The man discovers strength in vulnerability. The woman finds courage without losing her grace. And from that harmony, authentic relationships bloom. Love stops being a search for completion and becomes a natural expression of wholeness. That shift from dependency to integration is where true connection begins. When you reconcile with yourself, you stop seeking love to fill a void. You share love because it overflows. If this message resonates with you, write in the comments, I choose to integrate my shadow and live with awareness. And don't forget to subscribe to Unshakable Mindset. In the next chapters, we'll dive even deeper into this process of self-transformation. Real maturity is born from understanding of self and others. None of us are whole until we acknowledge the invisible forces shaping our inner world. Jung called these forces archetypes, ancient patterns that influence how we feel, think, and act. They live within us like characters in an inner play, each with its own voice and purpose. Sometimes the hero awakens, the part of us that rises to face challenges and steps beyond comfort. Other times, the sage appears, calling for silence, reflection, and meaning. There are also the magician, the trickster, the healer, the mother, each one carrying vital energy that must be balanced. When one archetype dominates, the psyche loses harmony. The hero in excess becomes pride. The sage turns into isolation. The mother can become control, disguised as care. Individuation, then, is the art of integration, allowing each inner force to play its part without taking over the stage of the soul. When balance returns, we become flexible, creative, and deeply authentic. One of the most powerful ways to recognize these inner archetypes is through dreams. The unconscious doesn't speak with words. It speaks with images, emotions, and symbols. Dreams of water often reflect our emotional state. Dreams of labyrinths reveal confusion or inner conflict. Each dream is a message, a bridge between your waking self and your deeper truth. Dreams of animals often bring forth our primal instincts, the untamed forces of our nature. Interpreting dreams isn't an intellectual task, it's an intuitive descent. It's allowing images to speak before words do. It's listening to what your unconscious is trying to communicate. Keeping a dream journal, noting recurring symbols, and reflecting on how each dream makes you feel can become a powerful tool for individuation. But along this path, there's something essential we all must learn: patience. We live in an age that glorifies speed, urgency, and instant results, but the unconscious doesn't work that way. It moves with the rhythm of nature, slow, deep, and silent. Individuation isn't a course you complete in a few months. It's a lifelong journey. Patience means respecting the timing of your soul. And here's a truth Jung deeply understood. Whenever you try to force your transformation, the ego takes over and blocks the process. Self-knowledge requires surrender, not control. It's a dance between awareness and mystery, between doing and allowing. That's why silence is sacred. In a noisy world, silence has become a spiritual luxury, yet it's within silence that the wisest voices of the soul begin to speak. Whether you meditate, walk alone in nature, write in solitude, or simply sit still for a few minutes, you open space for the unconscious to whisper its truth. Silence isn't empty, it's fertile. It's where the self begins to speak. The hero's journey, as described by Joseph Campbell and deeply aligned with Jung's vision, is the symbolic map of individuation. Each of us is the hero of our own story, called to leave the safety of the known, face trials, lose certainty, and return transformed. This journey is filled with loss, doubt, and revelation. But it's within the collapse, when everything seems to fall apart, that the soul expands. Maybe you're in one of those moments right now, feeling lost, uncertain, disconnected. If so, take a deep breath. You're not failing, you're transforming. That emptiness you feel isn't the end. It's an invitation. It's the unconscious asking for space to reveal something new. Individuation is exactly that, the union of the conscious and unconscious. On one side, the ego, everything you think you are. On the other, the unconscious, everything you've yet to meet within yourself. Integration begins when these two worlds finally meet, when you dare to look at what's been hidden, repressed, or forgotten in the shadows. It's not easy. The unconscious doesn't always show what we want to see. It reveals fears, guilt, impulses that challenge our ideal image. But in that confrontation, true freedom is born, because there can be no peace where there is denial. At the center of it all lies the self, the silent compass of the psyche, the symbol of totality. The self is both the destination and the guide. To discover it is to realize that there's something vast within you, something that watches, accepts, and unites all that you are. Integrating reason and emotion, light and shadow, masculine and feminine. This is the sacred synthesis of opposites. It's not about erasing differences, but allowing them to coexist in harmony. And when that happens, a new quality of being emerges, freer, more creative, more whole. And it all begins with a choice. Choose to look within. Choose to walk, even when you don't have all the answers. Choose to listen to the voice of yourself. If this message is awakening something inside you, write in the comments, "I choose to follow my inner hero's path." And don't forget to subscribe to Unshakable Mindset, because in the next part, we'll go even deeper into the masks, the ego, and the power of authenticity, lessons that can truly change the way you see yourself and the world around you. The masks we wear every day are, in some ways, necessary. They help us adapt, belong, play our roles in society. But there comes a point when those masks stop protecting us and start imprisoning us. When the face you show to the world becomes more real than what you actually feel inside, you lose touch with your essence. Individuation, then, is the process of peeling away these layers until only what's genuine remains. How many times have you felt like you were playing a role just to fit in, smiling when something inside you was silently breaking? That's the pain of living far from authenticity. And that's why Jung said that freeing ourselves from the masks is one of the most courageous acts of the human journey. To let them go is to invite vulnerability, but also freedom. It's the beginning of a life guided not by outer expectations, but by an inner truth that cannot be faked. If this resonates with you, type in the comments, "I choose authenticity. I choose to be real." A simple sentence, yet one of the most powerful you can ever say. Maybe it's the very first step of your own individuation. We live in an age of hurry and noise. Technology accelerates the world, but slows down the soul. Information is everywhere, yet wisdom is rare, and that's exactly why self-knowledge has become essential. Without it, we're easily swept away by anxiety, comparison, and loneliness. The process of individuation, born over a century ago, is still a compass for anyone seeking meaning amid the chaos. It teaches us that nothing we live is in vain, that even our pain carries the seed of growth. And that's what we explore here on Unshakable Mindset. Here, the goal isn't just to think, it's to feel. Not just to learn, but to awaken. If this kind of reflection speaks to your soul, subscribe now and keep walking with us through the landscapes of the mind and the depths of the human soul. Because being authentic is more than being different. It's being whole. It's acting from who you are, not from what others expect you to be. It's facing the fear of disappointing others and still choosing to be yourself. There's no greater peace than living in alignment with your own heart. And yes, it takes courage, the courage to break patterns, to disappoint, to rebuild yourself when everything tells you to just fit in. But that courage is what gives life its meaning. Existential crises, those moments when the ground disappears beneath you, are not endings. They're portals, gateways that the unconscious opens to force transformation. In those moments, the shadow rises, the ego trembles, and the old self begins to die, so the new one can be born. Jung said, "What is not made conscious returns." As fate, what we repress will eventually turn against us in the form of suffering, but when we face the chaos directly, it becomes the path itself. So, if you're going through one of these phases right now, remember, this is not the end, it's the beginning. Write in the comments, "I am transforming." This phrase carries power. It tells your unconscious that you are ready to walk through the fire of change. And somewhere along this long journey, something silent happens. A meeting. The meeting with the self. It's not something you explain. It's something you feel. A moment where everything suddenly aligns, when you sense that life had meaning all along. that somehow it was always leading you here. That encounter feels like a sunrise inside the soul, the moment when the ego bows before something greater and you finally understand you were never truly alone. But this meeting isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new journey, because finding the self is only discovering the map. Living by it, that's the real challenge, and that's where spirituality enters, not as religion, but as communion. Jung saw individuation as a profoundly spiritual path, reconnecting us to the mystery of existence, that which transcends the I and unites us with all that lives. Spirituality here is deep listening. It's the silence that allows you to hear the voice of the unconscious, whether through meditation, walking in nature, or simply sitting quietly with yourself. In that silence, answers don't come as words, they come as knowing. And when we learn to be silent, forgiveness becomes possible. Forgiveness of others and forgiveness of ourselves. Because no one can grow while carrying the weight of the past. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It means freeing yourself. It means understanding that pain was a teacher, that mistakes were necessary steps toward awakening. When forgiveness blooms, compassion follows. And with compassion, the soul becomes lighter, wider, more alive. In time, we realize that individuation is an act of radical self-love. It's saying, I deserve to be whole. It's choosing truth even when it hurts. It's walking forward even without guarantees. It's falling, rising, and continuing again and again. If something within you resonates with this message, write in the comments, I choose to know myself deeply. That is the password of those who've begun walking the path of the soul. Stay with us here on Unshakable Mindset, because in the next chapter we'll dive even deeper into the meaning of the collective unconscious and discover how understanding this vast inner dimension can change the way you see yourself and the world. There comes a moment in every inner journey when the old self must die so the new one can be born, and though that death feels terrifying, it is precisely that symbolic death that opens the space for true rebirth. The fear of this psychological death is natural. We're saying goodbye to the identities we once believed we were, but it's a necessary step, because only when the ego releases its illusions can the self rise in its full light. That is the moment when consciousness crosses the darkness and reaches the dawn. Sometimes it feels like the world inside you is collapsing. Breathe. What seems like destruction may actually be reconstruction. Write in the comments, I embrace my rebirth. Let this phrase remind you that behind every pain, a new life waits to blossom. During this transformation, something remarkable can occur. A symbolic figure emerges, a silent guide, an inner mentor. It may appear in dreams, in meditation, or moments of deep reflection. It's as if an ancient, wise, compassionate voice speaks directly to your soul. This presence comes not from outside, but from within. It is the personification of the self, the organizing center of the psyche, taking a form the ego can recognize. It brings guidance, intuition, and most importantly, courage. When you feel lost, this inner mentor reaches out an invisible hand to lead you back to yourself. This wisdom is within all of us. We just need silence to hear it. If you seek clarity or direction, write, I trust my inner wisdom. And if this reflection resonates with you, subscribe to Unshakable Mindset. Here, every word is a mirror. Every idea is a bridge between what you feel and what you have yet to understand about yourself. As you progress on this journey, something shifts. Life begins to express itself more spontaneously. Creativity, once contained, flows like a river reaching the sea, and this creativity is not limited to art. It appears in problem-solving, in relationships, in how we speak, how we exist. Integrating opposites within the psyche awakens a dormant creative energy. It is as if, by uniting reason and emotion, shadow and light, the unconscious offers new ways to be. And here lies a deep truth. Individuation is not isolation. It is connection, true connection. Psychological. Maturity arises from the balance of autonomy and intimacy. It is being whole without withdrawing. It is knowing how to be with yourself while fully loving another. When this happens, relationships gain depth. They no longer stem from neediness, but from freedom and mutual respect. Individuation includes the body. Jung understood that the soul speaks through it. Tension, illness, fatigue, all are symbolic language. When we disconnect from the body, we lose a part of the unconscious. Practices, like yoga, dance, meditation, or conscious breathing, do more than relax. They reconnect the mind to the body, the psyche to matter. The body is the temple of the soul. Listening to it is listening to yourself. A powerful tool on this path is the personal journal. Writing thoughts, dreams, emotions, and intuitions is a dialogue with the unconscious. It organizes inner chaos, brings clarity, and allows you to track your evolution. Reading old entries reveals just how far you've come. Each line a testament to transformation. Another essential symbol is the mandala, a universal image of wholeness. It represents the perfect circle, the self at the center, the integration of opposites. When mandalas appear in dreams or visions, it signals the psyche seeking balance. Drawing or meditating with them reorganizes your inner world, reconnecting you to your core. When ego and unconscious collide, the transcendent function emerges. It creates a third element, something new beyond duality. In this space, creative solutions appear, obstacles dissolve, and consciousness expands. This is the power of the unconscious. It does not destroy. It transforms what must evolve. Many artists unknowingly tap into this. By creating, they channel the unconscious, translating what cannot be spoken into form, color, and sound. Even if you are not an artist, every creative act, cooking, writing, caring, building, is a step toward becoming yourself. Individuation is not only personal. It carries ethical and collective dimensions. Jung spoke of collective shadows, the parts denied by whole societies, prejudice, violence, destructive patterns. By working on yourself, healing your wounds, integrating your shadows, you contribute to the healing of the world. Self-knowledge is a social responsibility, and perhaps the deepest revolution we can enact. Finally, one of Jung's most powerful tools, active imagination. Allow images and inner figures to emerge freely, while consciousness observes and interacts. It is a dialogue with the unconscious, a meeting of the inner and outer worlds, and a bridge to transformation. Active imagination bridges the self and the invisible. It is a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, between the human and the divine within us. To begin, simply close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let the images come, without judgment. Perhaps your inner mentor is waiting for you there behind the silence. If this message resonates, write in the comments. I trust my transformation process and continue here at Unshakable Mindset, because the next block will explore the role of the soul in balancing the inner and outer worlds, showing how life, even in its apparent chaos, always guides us back to our center. Individuation requires a safe internal space, an emotional foundation that allows vulnerability. Without it, the ego feels threatened and blocks contact with the unconscious. Caring for this space is caring for yourself, for your growth. This is where true freedom begins, not escaping rules or limitations, but being fully yourself, without fear, without self-deception. This freedom comes from integrating opposites, recognizing the shadow, dialoguing with internal archetypes, and connecting deeply with the self. It transforms life, makes decisions more authentic, relationships more genuine, and each choice more meaningful. Breaking free from internal and external expectations is an act of courage, opening the way to responsibility and fullness. Individuation does not belong only to youth. It often awakens in adulthood, when crises, questions, and life experiences intensify. This phase is fertile for integrating scattered parts of the psyche. It's when authentic values emerge, career or life direction may shift, relationships deepen, and a search for meaning intensifies. Each stage of life becomes an invitation to self-knowledge and reinvention, showing that the journey of individuation has no final destination. Recognizing your personal shadow directly impacts the quality of your relationships. When we fail to see our projections, we judge in others what we deny in ourselves, creating conflict and misunderstanding. By working with the shadow, we take emotional responsibility, develop empathy, and form healthier, more authentic bonds. Individuation is not only internal, it is reflected in how we relate to the world. Dreams remain one of the most powerful doors to the unconscious. Through symbolic language, they bring messages, warnings, and guidance from the self. Jung emphasized that interpreting dreams is not decoding images, but feeling their emotions, noticing symbols, and allowing these messages to guide us. Recording dreams, reflecting on them, and staying sensitive to symbols accelerates psychic integration. Transformation cannot be rushed. Deep change requires time, patience, and presence. Modern culture prizes speed, immediate results, and efficiency, but inner growth does not obey these rhythms. Rushing creates frustration and blocks. Patience opens the space for consistent evolution. Each step, each discovery, each setback is part of the path. Recognizing this is an act of self-love. Emotional maturity emerges from this journey. It appears as balance, resilience, self-confidence, and compassion. Integrating different aspects of the psyche allows you to face challenges calmly, feel emotions without being overwhelmed, and act consciously without repressing desires or impulses. It is a delicate yet profoundly liberating equilibrium. Inner silence becomes a powerful resource. Moments of contemplation, meditation, or connection with nature allow the mind to calm and the unconscious to reveal itself. This silent space is where the self speaks most clearly, cutting through external and internal noise. Jung reminds us, silence is not emptiness, it is life, presence, and wisdom emerging from within. Individuation also calls us to question cultural influences. Societal values, family patterns, and external expectations often shape behaviors that do not reflect the true self. Deconstructing these influences is challenging, but essential to live authentically. Recognizing that truth is relative and that each person constructs their perception of reality cultivates humility, openness, and mental flexibility. The body is another silent guide. It translates emotional and spiritual imbalance into sensations and tension. Learning to listen to your body, respecting its limits and signals, is a crucial step in integrating the psyche. This body awareness strengthens overall well-being and deepens connection with the self. Individuation connects the mind, body, and soul in a harmonious way. Our relationships act as mirrors of our inner world, revealing patterns, shadows, and archetypes, and offering opportunities to practice empathy, compassion, and self-awareness. Viewing each relationship as an invitation to grow transforms every day encounters into experiences of deep integration. If these reflections resonate with you, write in the comments, "I trust my journey of self-discovery." Keep walking with us at Unshakable Mind, because every step here brings you closer to your authenticity. The people and situations we meet act as mirrors, showing us parts of ourselves we didn't know. They can spark growth, reflection, and transformation, or, if ignored, reinforce blockages and emotional wounds. Learning to choose relationships that foster self-awareness is essential. Every challenge, every confrontation is an opportunity to understand yourself more deeply. Dreams and active imagination remain powerful guides. Symbolic animals, figures, and archetypes appear in our inner imagery, representing instincts, qualities, and aspects of the psyche that demand attention. A lion may symbolize courage, a snake transformation, a bird freedom. Reflecting on these symbols allows us to dialogue with the unconscious and turn the unknown into an ally. The relationship between the ego and the self is constant and dynamic. The ego, the center of our everyday consciousness, learns to serve the self. As the psyche expands and integrates, life can be lived with greater balance, clarity, and authenticity. Humor, often underestimated, is a powerful tool on the path of individuation. Laughing at ourselves, recognizing our contradictions, and facing challenges with lightness opens space for creativity, flexibility, and acceptance. Cultivating humor is an act of wisdom and self-love, connecting us to the lightness of existence. Beyond the personal shadow, there's the collective shadow, the parts of society that are denied or repressed. Facing it requires courage and awareness, transforming not just the individual, but contributing to collective awakening. Individuation, therefore, goes beyond the personal. It links self-knowledge to social and ethical responsibility. Ultimately, individuation is the deepest form of inner freedom. It's becoming whole, living in harmony with yourself and the world, taking responsibility for every thought, feeling, and action. Every shadow acknowledged, every archetype integrated, every symbol interpreted brings you closer to the self, the center of your wholeness. If this reflection on individuation touched you, leave a like to help share this content with others seeking meaning and transformation. To continue exploring profound topics like this, subscribe to Unshakable and hit the notification bell. Every video here is an invitation to dive deeper, grow, transform, and live fully. Remember, the path of the self is ongoing, and every conscious step is a step toward your true freedom.